Lorraine K. Lee. I'm really excited to have you on the podcast, and I want to open with this question. Hard workers and high achievers don't always get the promotions. Why do you think that is?
It's an unfortunate reality and something I have experienced myself as well. And this is why I'm so passionate talking about this concept of professional presence, because presence is both how and where you're seen. And I think so much of what we learn growing up in school, even at the beginning of our careers, focuses on, okay, you're going to do the work, you're going to work hard, you're someone who executes, you're a doer. And that gets you to a certain point. But if no one sees that work, if you don't know how to talk about that work, if you don't know how to be visible in the right places and be seen by the right people, it's really, what was the hard work all for? And so, and it really needs to balance out between how you are seen, a hard worker, someone who does great work, with the where, because with only one, you can't get too far, but with both, that's when it becomes a really powerful combination.
How so it seems like you may have personal experience with this,
Yeah.
right? And because I completely get what you're saying, right? You
Yeah.
go through school, you get the A's,
Yeah.
you do the competitions and you win those, and you
Exactly.
go all the way through school
Yep.
thinking that your great work should get you somewhere, and it doesn't,
Yep.
right?
hmm
And you have personal experience with that. Could you tell
hmm
us about that?
Sure. I open up my book with a story around my time at LinkedIn, and I loved my time at LinkedIn. And I essentially, the first year that I was there, I got promoted. And I think that was because of my hard work. I was able to execute well, and people knew me for that. But once you reach that middle level and you're trying to reach that senior level, that's one of the hardest jumps that you can make in corporate America, because all the things that got you to this point are not the same things that will get you to the next point. And so I wanted so badly to get promoted while I was at LinkedIn to reach that senior level. And no matter how hard I pushed, I worked on really big projects. I moved to Hong Kong for a year to help launch something. I was just always, doing what people asked of me. And despite that, I didn't get that promotion that I wanted. And it was only until or wasn't until I left LinkedIn and I really reflected and I was like, oh gosh, like I was being too passive. I wasn't taking charge. I wasn't thinking strategically, and I didn't know how to advocate for myself and advocate for my work. And so, it really taught me a lot of like what I wanted to change going into my next role at Prezi.
So then, what did you change?
Oh gosh, so many things. I think the first thing was my mindset. And I had to realize, and this is a concept I talk about in my book, is that you have to be the CEO of your own career. And so it's not up to your manager to help you get that promotion, although hopefully, they'll be a sponsor and an advocate for you. It's really up to you to understand, okay, when are promotions? How early should I be making my case? Who are the cross-functional stakeholders who I need to talk to? And really being more proactive instead of assuming, oh, there's a linear path set out for me because I am doing this or because I've been here for 3 years, I am going to end up with this positive outcome. And so mindset is really key to understanding that even if you have the best manager in the world, and I had so many amazing managers, it really is up to you because I'm sure, Gertrude, like there's so many things happening in our days and we all have our own problems that we're dealing with. And so
Yeah.
a manager will try to help, but they have their own career goals and aspirations and issues that they're dealing with as well.
Yeah.
So mindset was really key. And then I think building out my brand was another really big piece and being thoughtful about, okay, what is my career brand? How do I want people to perceive me? And what are the steps that I need to take and the things that I need to do in order to reach that future state of how I want to be seen?
So good. So, speaking about building a career brand, this is one of the things I'm also really huge on. And, used to get a lot of pushbacks from academics
Mm.
because a lot of academics, because we're talking about hard workers and high achievers. Clear,
Yeah.
academics are some of the hardest
Yeah.
working people, and they're high achievers as well.
Yeah.
And I used to get a lot of pushback on the idea of building a personal brand or even posting on a place like LinkedIn, right?
Sure.
Because your work should speak for itself, right? But clearly, what you're saying here is that your work will not speak for itself if you're not proactive about it. Now, how did you start building your? We're going to talk about how other people can start building their career brand, but what were the steps you took to establish your own career brand?
I have this framework that I like to share called the EPIC Career Brand Framework. And I think it's important to have a framework because when you hear personal brand, you hear the phrase career brand, which by the way are the same things. It can be very easy to maybe have negative assumptions of like what that means. Like, oh, I'm like a really loud person who's always marketing myself. I am perhaps disingenuous. Like, there's tons of negative connotations that come with the word personal brand. So that's also why I like the phrase career brand because
Career
it
brand.
really
Okay.
shows it's in service of your career. But the EPIC Career Brand Framework are the four things you need to start thinking about as you think about what you want your brand to be and what makes you uniquely you. So the first E is experiences. We all have experiences, whether we are just out of school, whether we are 20 years in the industry, both personal and professional experiences. The second is personality. So there's different traits that make us us, right? Like one of the things I talk about a lot on LinkedIn is how I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
And that's what people know me for, and that's part of my brand. So we all have different personality traits. Some of us are perhaps very like energetic. Maybe some of us are more serious. So talking about different aspects of your personality and understanding that is important. And then we have identity. So what are the values that are really important to you? Like what do you operate by, live by, and also even cultural identity and your background as well can be part of that. And then the last piece, which a lot of people forget about or don't think about, is the C, which is community. Now, the EP and I, you can have your own interpretation of what your brand is and how people see you. But if the C, community, does not see you that way, then there's a misalignment. And that means that your brand, what you think it is not actually what's being represented or being seen correctly in the outside world. And so making sure all these four things are considered, are aligned, is going to be a really great starting point to think about, okay, what does make me uniquely me? Like, what defines me? How do I operate in a work environment? And so those are some great four steps to get started, to start thinking about it.
So then practically taking that framework for somebody that they're listening to us, they want to start building a career brand. How do they practically take that epic framework you just shared and start implementing them? And do they only have LinkedIn as the place to implement it, for instance? Can they be building that offline? So
Sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, LinkedIn certainly, as you mentioned, is a very wonderful place to start doing that. I call LinkedIn our ultimate virtual office, virtual water cooler, virtual landing page. So you want to make sure that you are there, right? And being seen again, right?
Yeah.
Have a presence on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a wonderful place to start, and by creating content, by engaging with other people, by building your network, you are building your brand, right? That way, and by the way that you represent yourself on that virtual landing page, so to speak, is going to be a really key piece of your brand. Now, do you have to be on LinkedIn all the time? No, not necessarily. There are other things you can do. For example, one concept in the book that I talk about is your UPI, your unique and powerful introduction. And this is sort of like you can think of it like a mission statement or a value statement for what you can offer to the world or offer to your workplace. And your UPI can be formed by taking what you've learned from the EPIC framework, and it's how you position yourself when you meet new people at a networking event. Even when you are in a one-on-one call, right, at work or in a lecture, like meeting other coworkers, how do you introduce yourself on a call, right? So, for example, people, I think they use introductions as it's like a throwaway moment, like, oh, I'm Lorraine, and I'm an editor. Okay, like what does that mean? Right? You
Right.
might change that to, oh, I'm Lorraine, like I have a decade of experience leading editorial teams at top tech companies, and I'm super passionate about creating engaging content that educates audiences. So even like that small tweak, taking the experiences and the things I've learned over the years and what I'm passionate about, like that already you have like a much better idea of what I do and I sound more confident and it's more descriptive and you learn more about me. So that's me using an introduction, which can feel like a very simple throwaway moment, into a strategic moment to really represent yourself fully.
Okay, so can I practice that with you?
Oh,
And
please,
then you
yes.
can coach me on whether
Okay.
I did it well or not.
Okay, sure,
Okay,
sure.
so I meet you at a networking event. Hello, my name is Gertrude Nontra, and I host a podcast called I host a podcast called The Bold PhD that helps academics really think about intentionally designing their careers. Was that too much?
No, I like that. I like that. How do you normally introduce yourself?
Well, like you said,
Yeah.
sometimes I also think about it like like not a throwaway moment, but
Yeah.
maybe if this person gets to know me a little bit, they'll like me. But you're
Sure.
right, like first impressions, we all have a cognitive bias. And I don't know
Yeah.
why we don't think of it that way, but we all have a cognitive bias to think of people through the lens of a first impression, right? And so I think, yeah, you're on the money with like, if you're going to introduce yourself, then make that first impression good. What
Yeah,
can
and
I
like
have?
now, yeah, like if you were to introduce yourself to me like that, now I'm like, oh, like tell me more about that podcast. That sounds so interesting. Versus if you had just said like, oh, hi, I'm Gertrude. I lead a podcast. It's just sort of like, oh, okay, like great, and then I introduce myself, and then like that's the end of the conversation. But now it's like we have a chance to dig in a little bit more and learn more about each other too. So it's a great launching off point for conversation as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you move from building from link you eventually you move on from LinkedIn
Mhm.
and you change your mindset, you start building that career brand. How did that help you at your next job?
I feel like I entered my next job just so focused. I knew I wanted to get promoted. I joined, I guess you could say like maybe between mid to senior level. Maybe it was a senior level. I became a manager and I really wanted to become a director. Like that was super important to me. So I had so many more conversations with my manager. I think we set up maybe monthly meetings, like an hour just for career chats and for me to ask her about her experiences, what she saw was perhaps missing in what I was doing in order to get to that next level. And for me, like getting really concrete about, okay, what are the things I need to do or to focus on to get there, was something I didn't do at LinkedIn. At LinkedIn, I was more like, oh, I really want to get promoted. Like, and I just kept pushing out. I've been here for so long. Like, why haven't I gotten promoted? But at Prezi, it was like it was much more intentional. So I had things like those career conversations, and then later during my time at Prezi, became a public speaker. Started doing podcasts, webinars, things like that, and that really opened the door as well. And posting about it on LinkedIn, that really opened the door like so much more in terms of opportunity both externally but also internally. Like I was getting tapped for things to do things because people saw me on LinkedIn and they saw what I was doing and they were like there was a story where a coworker was, I think he was sick, and there was a media roundtable and they saw that I was doing the public speaking and sharing my thoughts and insights on LinkedIn and they were like, Lorraine, can you step in? I was like, oh, okay, like what a cool opportunity to represent the company at a media roundtable. So there's things like that. I think a lot of people think, oh, if I'm on LinkedIn, it has to be like I'm looking for a job, but no, very much so. It can build your brand externally and then also internally wherever you're working.
Hey, did you know that I speak to and train groups at universities, colleges, and professional organizations on the topics I cover on this channel? I do. So if your group would like to bring me in virtually or in person to cover intentional career design, personal branding that builds your career, careers within scientific communications or biotech, go to theboldphd.com/speaking. Yeah, that's such a good anecdote. Now, one of the questions I always run into when when I'm sharing, or even with what you brought up, and I want to tease that out, is when I'm doing stuff, people don't want people to see what they're doing behind,
Mm,
like after work, right? Like, oh, I don't want to post on LinkedIn that I was a public speaker somewhere because then maybe my coworkers are going to think, well, my coworkers are going to think I'm too much, or maybe my manager is going to think I'm trying to jump ship and become a public
Sure.
speaker full time,
Sure.
right? How do you overcome some of those feelings, the hesitancy? Because clearly, doing this external thing, and it's something I also call like creating your own party, right? Like
Yeah.
you're
Oh,
you're you're creating your own world
yeah.
outside of work. Because I think for the longest time, I don't know about you, but my parents' generation,
Yeah.
their identity was very much tied to their work.
Yeah.
So I'm
Same. Yeah.
right, I'm this and not very much outside of work. Well, I mean they had the outside life too, but there wasn't so much integration. But
Sure.
you're telling us that your external public speaking opportunities that you were posting on LinkedIn led to internal opportunities to do stuff.
Yeah.
So for the person feeling hesitant to do something like that, what would you say?
I would first normalize that feeling hesitant about being on LinkedIn is totally normal. I think it is quite nerve-wracking. Your professional identity is being associated with what you post, and even when I worked at LinkedIn as an editor, where it was my job to post content, I would always get really nervous anytime I had to hit post. So I just like to share that story to just normalize. Um, and I think to your point, like, people wondering, what are you up to, or maybe you're being too much. I think there's a balance, right, where you have to maybe not care so much what people think.
Yeah.
And also, you can be proactive about it, right? Like tell your manager, "Hey, I'm really passionate about public speaking. Like I'm super happy at the company, but you'll see me post more. Here's why I think it's great. Like the more I post and the more opportunities I get, people will know about me, and they know that I work at this company, and this is really positive free brand awareness for the company, right? And like I get invited to panels and this and that, and so that's really great. And then I would hope that you have coworkers who support you. I certainly, again, like posting on LinkedIn, I feel like it really elevates your presence, your leadership within an organization, because I would have people who sort of they saw me more as a leader, right? They see me posting on LinkedIn. It is a scary thing. So if you are the person who can push past that, to be brave, to post and just try it, people are like, wow, she's like a thought leader, like she's out there, right? And so there's plenty of benefits. I know there's things that people maybe worry about, but there's many more benefits on the other side, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. Many more benefits. So, like, punch fear in the face and go ahead and do it. um, so, I want to talk a little bit about your solopreneurship. So,
Yes.
have moved into starting your own business. You saw the opportunity of being laid off. I mean, for most people, and especially with the current environment we have,
Mhm.
right? I think this is a timely topic. There are people facing layoffs, people facing, their positions being considered redundant, and so don't have jobs, and they're on the job market. And maybe they're thinking, okay, I want to do my own thing. Well, first of all, what made you
Mhm.
want to do your own thing?
Honestly, it was not something that I ever envisioned for myself. While I was at Prezi, I started doing the public speaking, posting more on LinkedIn, and so people saw what I was doing. They would invite me to webinars, invite me on podcasts, but I didn't see it as anything beyond kind of a thing I was doing on the side and a thing to build my own career brand.
Yeah.
But then it started leading to opportunities. So I got my first like paid speaking gig. I became a LinkedIn learning instructor. But even still, like my friends would always ask me, like, "Are you going to become an entrepreneur?" Because they would see me posting on LinkedIn, and I was like, "No, I like corporate, and I'm just going to do the side hustle on the side." And I know that sort of limits maybe the growth because there's only so much time in a day.
Yeah.
But that's how I like it. And then I got laid off. And so at that point, I had to decide, do I want to apply for another job, or do I want to, perhaps this is the universe's sign, the universe telling me that it's time to, maybe try going off on my own. And so talked it over with my husband. We were like, okay, let's give it a year and just see what happens. And it was great. Like I really loved it. Of course, it's a lot and a lot of work. I know sometimes it can seem like grass is greener sometimes with solopreneurship, but yeah, it's been an amazing ride. Going into year 3 now, and you mentioned my book earlier, Unforgettable Presence, like that's launching in April. So a lot of exciting things to look forward to, and I feel like a lot of things, again, like things that I didn't even expect are coming my way. And so it's good advice generally, whether you're in corporate or solopreneur, to stay open.
Yeah, to stay open, absolutely. What lessons? What are like one or two big lessons you've learned in these last 3 years of entrepreneurship?
I think the first one for anyone who's thinking about making the leap is you need to know if you, or you need to figure out rather, if you are comfortable without structure. Because especially at the beginning, you're like, what is happening? What am I doing? Where do I find clients? Like all that kind of stuff. You have to be okay. You have to be really self-motivated to do things. And some people don't like to do that and they rather have a corporate environment. And that's really good if you know that. I honestly didn't know when I started. I was like, am I going to be tempted to like nap all day because no one's holding me accountable except
Yeah.
myself? But I actually was, thankfully, I think very, very motivated to make this work. And so I think understanding that about yourself is really helpful. And if you're able to start something on the side, that might be able to give you a good indication. The second thing I think maybe I'll give two more tips. The second thing is that relationships are super, super critical. Businesses are built on relationships and your network is key. So networking should be something that is always happening throughout your life, whether you have a job, whether you don't have a job. And for anyone who's thinking networking is cringy, it's, just thinking of it as building relationships and
Yeah.
trying to help other people. The more you
Yeah.
help other people, it will come back around eventually. And it feels good to help other people, right?
Yeah, it
Especially if we're in
does.
a privileged enough spot to do that. So relationships are super key. The third thing I would say is you have to be okay with uncertainty. And you're not always going to know when your next paycheck is coming. There's going to be periods where you're like, oh, it's kind of slow. Like, am I going to survive this? And so you have to have fortitude to kind of push past those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. So good. Thank you for those solopreneur tips. I love the fact that I really do love the fact that you created your own thing on the side, and you were doing this on the side whilst you had your job, and then once and you had every plan of staying for a long
Yeah.
while,
Yeah.
but life happens, and this
Mhm.
happened, and you were able to shift gears into that, which I also identify with because I've been through a layoff, and
Yeah.
I still work in corporate now. I went back to corporate, but I remember going through the layoff, being disappointed, but then
Yeah.
also turning that around, and turning that into a really cool story. So that this is awesome. You wrote a book called Unforgettable Presence
Yes.
around building your career brand. What's an insight from that book that you want people to know about that would get them going to pre-order your book?
Oh my gosh. Hopefully everything in the book. Yeah, to your point, so my book is coming out in April, on April 22nd. Unforgettable Presence, Get Seen, Gain Influence, and Catapult Your Career. I feel like we've definitely touched on some key points. The beginning of the book opens up with mindset, your career brand, LinkedIn, all which I think are very foundational to anyone's successful career. Something else that the book talks a lot about is our presence in digital spaces and virtual spaces beyond LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is one, but how we show up on camera, how we show up and communicate in Slack channels, Teams channels, the way we write emails, how we present virtually. These are all such opportunities to stand out, to build that influence, to be recognized, to be seen as a leader, to look professional, to represent yourself the way you want to be seen. But again, like a lot of people, like our virtual spaces, we are very distracted. There's a lot going on. Like we might send like a very thoughtless, just a quick message, right? But it like causes more confusion than clarifies things. On video, we might be in dark rooms and people are thinking like we don't look like we are very professional or what we're doing. And, subconsciously or otherwise, like we're forming those impressions. And so as much as you can really be intentional about every touch point that we have. And again, like the book is talking about how presence is not just executive presence and how we show up in a room, but it really is this more holistic thing across all these different important touch points. How
Yeah.
can we take charge of our presence, professional presence, in order to be seen the way that we want to be seen and go from overlooked to unforgettable?
Go from overlooked to unforgettable. Thank you so much. So, Lorraine, your book comes out on April 22nd, which is my birthday.
Oh, yay! So fun.
And yes, yeah, April 22nd is my birthday. And so when I saw that, I was like, ooh, another reason to chat with Lorraine. So, thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. Where can people find you? Where can people go pre order your book?
Yes. Okay, so you can find my book at unforgettablepresencebook.com. And so there will be a place to buy the book and then also submit your pre-order receipt. So if you submit it beforehand, you get access to over $500 worth of pre-order bonuses and some exclusive webinars that we actually just announced. So the sooner you pre-order, the earlier access you get to those webinars and you can attend live. And then, of course, follow me on LinkedIn under Lorraine K. Lee. And then for anyone who wants more career tips, like some of the ones I shared today, my newsletter, Career Bites, shares weekly bite-sized tips to supercharge your career in 3 minutes or less, and that is free.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Lorraine. This was such a great conversation.
Thank you for having me.